Good evening, Suburban readers and Suburban viewers, to another episode of Beyond the Pages, part of our new Suburban on-air channel. It's an exceptional program tonight because we meet at a very trying and difficult hour. Those of you who've watched the news today know about the explosions in Lebanon. They have taken a terrible and devastating toll. The number of dead is now at 70 and rising. The number of injured is approaching 4,000. The explosions took place in a warehouse in the port of Beirut, not far from what was called the Croisette. And for those of you who had the good fortune to be in Beirut at any time, as I have, it's a beautiful area where the hotels are. And if there's a reason that Beirut was called the Paris of the Middle East, a lot of that was that area. Prime Minister Hassan Diab has said that those responsible will be accountable and will pay for the, quote, martyrs and the wounded. And in his remarks, he seemed to be very confident in knowing who they were. But we're not going to speculate politically tonight. We're going to talk about the human toll. We're going to talk about what Lebanon has gone through the past 6 to 8 months. And we're very fortunate to have with us one of the preeminent leaders of the Lebanese-Canadian community, a community of some 200,000, 225,000 that has contributed to this country out of all proportion to its numbers. She's also my dear friend, Caroline Codsi. Ms. Codsi is currently the founder, the president of Gouvernance, feminin, which is an organization that seeks to empower women and find their place in corporations and in non-government and non-private sectors. She is a graduate of the HEC in Montreal. She also holds degrees from the Université de Paris Diderot, as well as, I'm forgetting one university.
McGill.
McGill, yes. She has, before founding Women in Governance in 2010, she held senior vice president and vice president positions in a number of Canadian organizations, both corporate and public sector in terms of NGOs. And she's a dynamo and a force of nature, and she's a proud Lebanese-Canadian. And I'm very fortunate to have her with us tonight. You've seen her before tonight on CTV and other networks. And Carolyn, good evening, and thanks for making the time to be with us.
Thank you, Beryl. It's an honor to be here.
Carolyn, first of all, I have to ask you, I know what I didn't mention in the introduction. Carolyn came to Canada with her parents, obviously, at the age of 7. It was in the middle of war-torn Lebanon. She went back and then came back again. So
at 11, actually.
At 11. So
I came at 11 and I left at 15.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For 4 years.
Okay. First of all, you have friends and family in Lebanon. What are they saying? What is their condition? Are they all right?
It's been a very, very difficult day today, Beryl. I haven't been able to focus on anything else. Obviously, I have spent the day writing to friends and family in Lebanon to find out how they were doing. Devastated to learn that many have lost their homes. The neighborhood where I was born, Ashrafiyeh, is practically reduced to ashes. Family members were wounded, but luckily lightly. No death to report in my family, but I know that some friends have lost people around them. So it's a tragic toll on the country. It's everybody is completely shocked. There has been so much going on in the past, I want to say the past few months, but as you know, it's in the past few decades.
We know the wars that Lebanon has gone through. And before I get to what specifically has gone on to make it worse the past 8 to 10 months, I just want to ask you, and I want our viewers to be aware, when you see the films of the bombs, and there are 2 bombs going off, there are 2 explosions. One is a pillar of white smoke, evidence for any of us who've been from the military, of a normal explosion. The second explosion, coming seconds later, is a mushroom cloud with a fiery center. That is the explosion that did such damage that, for those of you who don't know the distances, you'll see one film of a large complex in the foreground of the film. There's a very good film by Elie Fawaz for The Guardian, completely demolished. Now, that's 3 kilometers from the port. So, Carolyn, this isn't even a matter of East Beirut, Christian, West Beirut, Muslim. This was everywhere.
This was everywhere, absolutely.
Beirut's not that deep.
Absolutely. And it was even heard all the way to Cyprus, which is 200 kilometers away.
It was a 4.9 on the Richter scale in Cyprus. There were pictures of fishermen, Lebanese fishermen, off the coast of Lebanon, who had parts of their flesh torn off in their boat, sitting offshore filming this.
Exactly, and there was even huge waves. I mean, almost a tsunami caused by the explosion.
What are people doing there to take shelter? When you say that your family and friends, only one thankfully was injured, where are they tonight or during the day? Where do they go?
Well, most are going into regions where things are not as dramatic, where homes have still been protected. And, you know, the Lebanese are very hospitable. It's not a legend. So obviously everybody's taking care of their loved ones and making sure everyone has a roof. I just really don't know how long it's going to take to rebuild. I mean, how many times has Beirut been either bombed or bombarded through, you know, air or car explosions or all sorts of you know, war-related events, and rebuilding time after time. There was a time where there was an economic power in the region that made it relatively, I don't want to say easy, but accessible to rebuild. I'm just extremely concerned right now, Beryl, because in the country there's no money. There is everything is difficult to get in terms of goods. So all of a sudden nobody has windows anymore. I don't know if you've seen some footage of buildings. They're one after the other. None have windows anymore. A lot of houses don't have roofs anymore. So it's a tragedy over so many other tragedies that we've been living through over the past few decades, as I mentioned. Because apart from the fact that the war lasted 15 years, from 1975 to 1990, I think that since 1990, so the past 30 years, things have almost gotten worse than they were during the war. When I lived in Lebanon during the war, we were never scared of not having bread. We were never scared of, you know, we were scared of obviously the war and the craziness and no electricity, and it's just an insane period. And actually, I have to tell you, Beryl, right now with COVID, or I would say maybe 2 months ago, it felt like when we were at war in Lebanon, because nobody knew what was going to go on, who was going to save us, how was this going to end. But Lebanon's tragedy has just been increasing. It's just been deepening over the past few years. And I think one of the biggest problems in Lebanon comes from its leaders. So when I was a child growing up in Lebanon, the young war-thirsty leaders at the time are today's old war-thirsty leaders. They're the same ones. They don't compromise. They don't think of the community, of the people. They are corrupt. They are only focused on winning, not a win-win solution. And they don't try to, you know, bring everyone to the negotiation table. So it's always been extremely conflictual. And, you know, I'll tell you, obviously, as a woman who's hoping to see more women in leadership roles, especially in politics, that there are very few women who make these decisions. So I tend to think that if we had more women at the peace negotiation tables, we'd be better off.
Before, just to take your point, I was going to go on to something else, but you bring up a very important point in Lebanon's history. So before the war started in 1975, sparked, of course, by the arming of the PLO that was in southern Lebanon, the Litani River, after King Hussein's Black September, threw them out of Jordan. But even through the Civil War period, you basically had 5 families: the Shamuns, the Jumaels, the Awuns, Jumblat, and who am I missing? I'm missing Frangia.
Frangia, yes, they were our neighbors in our building.
They were the five leaders, and you have to add to that, of course, in the past 10 to 12 years, the presence of Hezbollah.
Of course.
What power does the old guard leadership of Lebanon, the old guard political and Falange leadership, have against the almost supranational power of Hezbollah?
Well, Aoun has very tight ties with the Hezbollah. They now have a seat at the table. They're an official political party in Lebanon that has unbelievable power,
I think they have a
although
third of the
many
seats in
countries consider them as a terrorist group. In Lebanon, it's a political party that is, in place and very powerful, more powerful than the Lebanese army itself.
But that's what I mean. Regardless of what other countries consider them as, Lebanon has about a third of the seat. Hezbollah has about a third of the seats in the Lebanese parliament. They're still carrying out terror whenever they want. Is the old guard with their militias pretty well impotent? They're not going to attack Hezbollah, and Hezbollah still has their tent city in the middle of Martyr Square. So there's not going to be any conflict there.
Internal conflict against Hezbollah?
Between the old line leadership and Hezbollah.
No. Hezbollah is too powerful for any of that to happen.
A short answer to this question, but since you opened the door to the politics, I've got to ask you, can there ever be a solution? Can Lebanon ever have peace without Hezbollah dropping their demand for total supremacy over the government?
Listen, Beryl, it's extremely complicated. There was a French historian who used to say, if you understood anything about Lebanon's history, then you haven't understood anything. It's the number of forces that are at play. It's beyond just Hezbollah. Behind Hezbollah is Iran, and then Iran and Saudi Arabia are battling each other on Lebanese soil. So, it would be difficult for me to give you an answer on whether there would be a viable solution. What I can tell you is if to begin with, we could stop with the corrupt government. They're all billionaires. They've all only worried about their own pocket and their own agenda. What we need now is for the people, and then there was a revolution in October before COVID hit. Things were progressing very nicely where you had very quiet revolution. There was little violence, very minimal. Women were leading the way in that revolution. And it was a period of hope and a period of unity between religions, because you had the Muslims and the Christians and the Sunnite, the Shiite. Let's
divide that up. Let's divide that up even more. You had the Sunnis, you had the Shiites, you had the Maronites, you had the Orthodox Christians, and you had the Druze. So there's a lot to.
Hey, you're forgetting my community, the Catholics.
Well, that you got to explain one day, not in this interview perhaps, but my Maronite friends tell me they are the Catholics. I'm getting totally confused. No, they're not. Okay, we got
No. But do you know what that means, Beryl? It means that not being a Maronite,
right?
I will never be able to be president of the Lebanese Republic. You have to be a Maronite.
Well, okay, you're opening up a lot of doors, and I love you that you're doing it, because I'm a nut about Lebanese history. So let me explain to our viewers something before I get back to another door you open that takes me back to where I wanted this conversation to go. So Lebanon, when it gained its independence, created a constitutional fiction. They took their last census and they said, okay, this is the percentage of all these religious groups, and each one of these groups will be president, prime minister, speaker of the parliament, head of the armed forces, and there's a fifth position I'm forgetting, and they have to rotate. So that's
exactly, they have to rotate. The three top jobs at government, so the president, the prime minister, and the what did you call him? I forget, the
speaker of the parliament, the head
speaker,
of the
exactly.
So you as a Maronite could do what? You've got one.
The Maronite is president.
Okay, well that's pretty good.
And the prime minister is Sunnite. I don't know how to say that in English. Sunnite.
Say it in French.
Sunnite.
Okay.
Sunnite and Shiite. The speaker will be Shiite.
It's not a time to laugh tonight, but the history is really remarkable. The Lebanese have a genius for history, a genius for politics. And let me get back to something else you opened, and a genius for rebuilding and a genius for commerce. They're truly the heirs of the ancient Phoenicians. So you said something in your opening remarks that you don't think there's the money to rebuild anymore. Now, after the last war, at least certainly a lot of Beirut was rebuilt, but when you went from the port of Junayn, for our viewers, it's a port north of Beirut, and you continued up, there was $8 billion of construction. You thought you were in another country. Is that possible today?
Well, listen, you know that Rafik Hariri, who used to be prime minister, assassinated, and there is an ongoing investigation that I think the results will be unveiled very shortly.
They're supposed to be unveiled tomorrow by the UN, which makes this whole explosion today really suspect, but be that as it may.
Exactly. So he was a billionaire who was in great part responsible for the rebuilding of downtown Beirut, and there's a lot of very powerful Lebanese people with a lot of money. Many made their billions in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and the Gulf countries. So today the situation is such that even the rich are poor for many reasons. First of all, they can't withdraw their money from the banks. I think they're limited at about $1,000 a month.
I've heard that there's a limit of something like $300 a week. So how do you even pay workers?
Exactly. It's a little over $1,000 a month, so you can't get your money out. You're in a situation where Ashrafieh, the neighborhood where I was born, which was always flourishing, is starting to be a poor neighborhood like any other neighborhood. People are committing suicide. People are going bankrupt. There's a 35% unemployment rate. 1 out of 2 Lebanese people are living under the seuil de la pauvreté, under the poverty line. And we've seen robbers go into homes, which is unheard of. They go into homes and they rob the fridge. They empty the refrigerator. They take food. They touch nothing else. We've seen a father going into a pharmacy with a gun to get diapers and milk for his baby. It's all of this is unheard of. So all of a sudden, and also the inflation is incredible. People go into supermarkets, they have no idea what the price of goods are because the price is changing all the time. So it's only when you get to the cash that you actually know what the price, because it's the price of the second that you're buying. Every day, all the prices change. The Lebanese pound is worth nothing now. It's worth 6 times less than just a few months ago. So people are just losing their lifetime of savings. I really don't know how you can rebuild on a situation like this.
Now, this is a very important point, and it's something that you and my other Lebanese friends have made me aware of the past 8 months or so. The economic decline that started at the same time, as you said, the political reforms started, or the reform movement started. What caused the economic decline in the fall? Was there a precipitating factor? Because there's a humanitarian disaster building in Lebanon, even before this explosion.
What everyone says is that it's really corruption related, that the government officials are filling their pockets, and the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is now just refusing to lend any more money. And they're even, there was a declaration by their head, who's actually female CEO to the IMF. Her name escapes me right now. Georgina Christ. Anyway, I've met her, but I'm sorry, her name escapes me. And she was, with tears in her eyes, saying, help us help you. But there are conditions for other countries to keep lending money, and one of them is to show a change in government, to make you had at some point, if nothing is done to change the government that's in place, if corruption continues, but not only corruption, Beryl, and this is where it's appalling, it's incompetence. It's poor decisions are being made.
By the way, her name is Kristalina Georgieva.
Kristalina Georgieva, exactly. And it's striking to see. So there was her. There was a deputy in France also who was almost crying at Parliament about the situation in Lebanon and saying, the Lebanese are not helping themselves. We want to help, but at some point something's got to give. And it's heartbreaking, because it's a country filled with brilliant people, a country that has the best weather on the planet, that has the beach, and an hour away you can be on a ski hill, and everybody agrees that it was the Paris of the Middle East, that it was Switzerland of the Middle East. yet we just can't find a durable solution. And it's been, I was 7 years old when the war started. It's not a secret. I'm 52 today. Can you believe that I've never seen my country at peace? All I remember are images. Today's devastation is worse than anything we've ever seen. But it just looks so familiar, being on a balcony and seeing an explosion time and time and time again.
The images from today of apartment buildings, high-rise apartment buildings with their balconies blown out. They had glass balconies or plastic balconies 3 to 4 kilometers from the site of the blast, and all you saw was shards. But on this point, since last fall, there have been organizations that have risen up to ask for aid for the Lebanese people, not the Lebanese government, but direct aid for the Lebanese people. And that's a way that Montrealers and Canadians can help directly today more than ever, with people immediately needing things because they've lost their houses, they've lost their jobs, they've lost the breadwinners of their families in many cases, or many of them have been injured. What are some of the organizations that our listeners can call or write into and help and send money and aid to Lebanon?
Well, I definitely know that the Lebanese Red Cross has always been very active. I'm not sure which other, there's often, groups, community groups that organize fundraising. I haven't seen any yet, fundraising that are targeted to what just happened. But I know that the needs are huge. But the Lebanese Red Cross would be a very good place to start.
Are they reachable from Canada?
Absolutely.
Tell me, one other organization, let me ask you about. It was one of my first public talks after I founded my Institute for Public Affairs was to the Canadian Syrian Lebanese Association, which was founded in 1928. They have a great number of businessmen and a lot of people. As a matter of fact, a Montrealer died, Nazar Najarian, Lebanese Montrealer, died in his office in Beirut. He was in the import-export business. Is it worthwhile contacting them? Do you know if because they seem to be a very central organization. Is it worthwhile contacting them?
I'm not familiar with them. I'm very familiar with the Canadian Lebanese Chamber of Commerce. Yes. I'm certain that they're organizing something at their end as well. I can definitely find out. I do appreciate your question, Beryl, because a lot of people do send their thoughts and prayers, and we are at a time where we need action and support. So definitely we'll be happy to get back to you with
the Lebanese-Canadian Chamber of Commerce. I think a friend of mine named Ziad Abdel Noor was president of that at one time. If not now. I don't know if that name...
Right now it's Charles. His last name escapes me, but his first name is Charles. They rotate on a regular basis.
Not Charles Goria.
He's in his second mandate right now.
Charles Goria?
No.
I'll find it and I'll put it into the story in the paper after the broadcast.
Perfect. Yes.
But for people who are listening, there's the Lebanese Red Cross. I think the Canadian Syrian Lebanese Association is worth a call. And as Caroline just suggested, the Lebanese-Canadian Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, and I'm happy to share more links. I'll find out who's organizing any relief for Lebanon.
Caroline, I thank you again for being with us, and I leave the closing remarks to you. Tell our viewers whatever you want to say to them.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Beryl. First of all, thank you for being such a good friend to the Lebanese people. You've always been very vocal, not just now, but we've spoken about the issue many times in the past. So I appreciate your knowledge on the situation and your interest. Canada is filled with Lebanese that are so eager to contribute. We're so proud to be able to make a significant contribution in Canada and everywhere we go. Lebanese people are known for their, as you said, they're great in commerce, they're amazing in so many different fields, and they're very amicable and sociable. We are at a point where we need more help than ever. I would have never thought that so many years after the war, we feel like we're in a worse situation than even 1983 when I was there and everything seemed to be collapsing. So I just want to thank the people for their interest in the topic, and anything that can be done to help relieve the situation right now would be greatly appreciated.
Caroline, thank you again. Caroline Codsi, shukran habibti, and to all of you listening and watching, pay attention to this story. Do whatever you can do. there are a few people in the world as close to the Canadian feeling and the Canadian mosaic as the Lebanese. For now, good night and good luck. Thank you very much for viewing. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you so much.